Welcome in to the 48 Minutes podcast on BLEAV. I'm Ross Geiger, the former NBA video coordinator, and I'm joined alongside Bruce Bernstein, our four-time Emmy Award winner, who spent more than 3 decades at ESPN producing NBA shows, SportsCenter, and soaking up knowledge from the best hoop analysts in the business. Also joining us is the guy on this show that still has a horse left in the race, and that's the 2-time Emmy Award winner, Michael "WorldBeef" Freer, who's a senior writer at Stat Factor, specializing in writing advanced statistical NBA reports for various announcers across the league. This is episode number 157, the Julius Randle episode, as Randle is the last NBA player to score exactly 57 points in an NBA game, and he did so on March 20th of 2023 as a member of the New York Knicks. Bruce and WorldB, I'll give you both one guess on which team he dropped 57 points on. Bruce?
Charlotte?
Nope. WorldB?
Timberwolves.
That is correct. The Minnesota Timberwolves. So with that, let's go ahead and start talking about the Western Conference Finals and give our listeners a preview on that, as the number 1 seed Oklahoma City Thunder had their backs against the wall in a Game 7 against the Denver Nuggets on Sunday afternoon. But they really showed their true colors in that one and came out on top. So they'll be moving on and playing the 6th seed Minnesota Timberwolves. And this matchup begins on Tuesday night. So a really quick turnaround here for the Thunder. How do we like the Timberwolves' chances in Game 1 and ultimately in the series, Bruce?
Well, I just want to back up a quick second to Sunday, just to say, because in 3 minutes at the end of the first half, OKC won the game. They simply just did. You know, they had a 1-point lead with 3:21 left. And then in the final 3+ minutes, they just opened up a can of whoop ass at the defensive end. They expanded, Jalen Williams went nuts. They expanded their lead to 14. It got obviously even worse in the third as they kept the heat on. But I was super proud that my friend Mike Breen actually used a line that I've used a number of times on this show this year when it came to describing Oklahoma City's defense. He said, "It looks like they're playing 6 against 5 out there." And I was thinking, I know he doesn't listen to this podcast, so it's really just a matter of a brilliant minds thinking alike, I suppose, although Breeny's is a little bit more brilliant than my own. However, this series is going to be a dog fight because these really are the 2 best teams in the West going into the season. That's how I had predicted it. I think you guys were kind of along those same lines with your predictions. So I think Minnesota might have, a good chance. But look, the way Oklahoma can just flip that switch on defense, it's really, really impressive.
Super impressive there. And I thought the head coach of the Denver Nuggets, David Adelman, summed it up nicely after the game. He said the entire game, they kind of pushed us off our spots. We were playing way up the floor. We weren't getting any type of positioning to where we could take advantage of things. And that's truly just a credit to the tenacity on the defensive end for the Thunder. WorldB, what would you like to add here on that Game 7 with the Thunder just completely dominating the Nuggets?
We talk about their defense and how well they played, and all of that's true, but they needed a good shooting performance because they had really been struggling shooting the ball in that series, really in the playoffs. Even though they took care of Memphis, they not had a good postseason shooting the ball, especially from the perimeter, and they got it in that Game 7. And that was the one thing I took away, is because we know they're a great defensive team. I've talked about it all year, how they were the best defensive team in the league by a mile, as it turned out. But they need to show it on offense. They had a top 10, top 5 offensive efficiency this season. It just hadn't been there shooting-wise during the playoffs, and it really showed up when they like Bruce mentioned, when they needed it most. They showed up and really turned the switch at that end of the court too.
Yeah, and you talk about that shooting. I mean, so far in the playoffs, Anthony Edwards has kind of struggled from the field in the playoffs, shooting the basketball. He's going to really have to kind of find his stride quickly here against a very tough defense in the Oklahoma City Thunder, because, boy, without him providing a scoring punch, that would be one of my biggest concerns for the Wolves moving forward. Bruce, being our fellow ESPN former producer here, any ideas on why this series is starting before the Knicks-Pacers series a day? Like, I know it's just one day, but couldn't they have given the Thunder an extra day, having just played on Sunday?
I think if the TNT and ESPN assignments for the conference finals hadn't been set in stone, they might have been able to flip this. But, Turner is scheduled for the nights. Their program schedule is set. ESPN, same deal. Also, too, had the Celtics-Knicks gone 7 games, Game 7 would be happening Monday evening as we're recording the show.
Good point.
So those are probably a combination of those two reasons.
Gotcha. Now, looking at the Minnesota Timberwolves, how do you think they fare in this matchup against the Thunder? They're obviously playing some really great basketball here as of late. They've moved on and have had some big performances from guys like Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels. So do you think those X factors on the Wolves moving forward can step up yet again against a team like the number 1 seeded Thunder?
Look, Minnesota since March 1st, regular season and playoffs combined, they're 25-6. Pretty impressive, right? In that same time frame, Oklahoma City is 28-6. So these two teams are both playing. They're both at the top of their games right now. They're both coming into this series with a head of steam. They're playing their best ball when it matters the most. I think, they split the season series 2-2. Anthony Edwards and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander should more or less cancel each other out as far as numbers, but I think it's going to be much tougher for Ant to get points than it is for Shai, because there are 4 legitimate perimeter stoppers that they can throw at him. They can obviously throw Lou Dort. They can throw Cason Wallace. They can throw Jalen Williams, and they can throw Alex Caruso, who played as well as anybody on Sunday for Oklahoma City. He was just a complete madman on defense. So, this is going to be a really close series. Those two guys are both going to get their numbers, but they're, certainly Ant is going to have to earn every bucket. As for defense, I give OKC a slight edge, although Minnesota is right there with them as far as a great defensive team too. So it's a very slight edge. I think Holmgren and Hartenstein, I give them a slight edge over Gobert and Naz at the defensive end.
Yeah. World B, what are your thoughts on the matchup?
Well, I'll tell you this. The one thing from OKC standpoint, it's the fact that, one of the big things, what made them so dominating, one of the things is not only did their defense force you into a lot of turnovers, their offense didn't make a lot of mistakes. During the regular season, they averaged almost 9 fewer turnovers, than their opponents. And then in the playoffs, it was about the same too. In the first round. In the second round, it was only about a difference of, I think, 6 or 7 with Denver. And in the regular season against Minnesota, there was only a difference. They had, I think, 3.5 fewer turnovers. The gap was a little tight in there. I mentioned before, can OKC shoot like they did in Game 7, or is this a trend we're going to see here? Because overall, even though they had a great Game 7, they still made less than a third of their threes against Denver. And then can they get the rebounds? Their world really got better when Holmgren got healthy and Hartenstein, and when those two were on the court in the regular season, they were monsters on the glass. They grabbed almost 57% of all available rebounds. Oklahoma City did when those two were on the court. But in this series, or in the postseason, I should say, it's less than 50%. It's actually against Denver. It was less than 50% against Denver. That's a big deal going up against some guys like Rudy and Naz and some of the bigs they have there. So I'm looking forward to see if they can rebound the way they can. And then for me, Minnesota, Oklahoma City has the depth edge clearly. But Minnesota's starters, when they were on the court, they've dominated in this postseason. They outscored opponents by almost 20 points per 100 possessions when their 5 starters are on the court in the playoffs. And against Golden State, it was almost 27 points per 100 possessions. That's an astronomical number. That's an unbelievably dominant number. And one reason why they had such an easy time with it. And I think it's going to be a really close series. We'll give our predictions here in a minute, I'm sure. But I do think Oklahoma City or Minnesota's offense, I think, if they can do what they did the last 4 games of that series, they can hold up against Oklahoma City's defense.
If Julius Randle could continue playing the way he's been playing, that is a huge, huge factor for them. He's averaged like 24, 6, and 6 in the postseason. I mean, those 6 assists. I mean, I don't know that Julius Randle's ever been a 6 assist per game guy in the course of his career, but he is now.
Yeah, I think Julius Randle is the X factor for the Minnesota Timberwolves. If they're going to have success, he's really going to stand out in this series. I mean, you kind of look at his position out on the floor, his size, his build, his frame. I think he causes a lot of matchup problems, even defensively, for a team as skilled as the Thunder. But he's also got to be able to shoot the ball well, because if he can keep that hot shooting going, they're going to have to keep him honest from the three-point line. If he's bricking those shots, they're going to let him take them as I don't want to make it as dramatic as Russell Westbrook shooting it, but like they're gonna allow him to take those threes, keep it out of Ant's hands, and that's one less problem you have to deal with. But I think Julius Randle can really open things up for Anthony Edwards and everybody else out on the floor. And as you alluded to, Bruce, the 6 assists, I think, tell the tale on that is the fact that when he's making shots, it warrants more attention, and then he's able to dish off. And he has shown in his years past that he is a very capable ball distributor, and did that a lot with New York.
I totally agree with that, Ross. I think 20 plus points in 8 of his last 9 games here in the postseason. You're absolutely right though about the perimeter shooting. He's really struggled until that clincher over Golden State. Had his best game of the postseason, over 30 points, really shot the ball well there. Up until then, even though he's getting his points, he had not shot the ball well. But it's really good to see him, as the Knicks fan here, it's really good to see him shake off all the criticism that he had when he was with the Knicks, because that was a big deal in Knickland that he wasn't able to come up produce in the postseason. And last season, he wasn't even healthy enough to play. But prior to that, he just didn't have really good numbers in the postseason. He's putting a lot of that to rest right now with this run that he's on right now. And that's good for him, because he's a really I don't forget him as a Knicks fan. I don't forget how much he meant as far as their turnaround as a franchise. He was the part of it. He is the big man. It wasn't Jalen Brunson. Before Jalen Brunson, it was Julius Randle.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. All right. Well, fellas, it's prediction time. Bruce?
Well, Oklahoma City finished the regular season with 19 more wins than Minnesota, 68-49, okay? They went wire to wire with the best record in the entire NBA. Then they overcame a very gritty Nuggets team. So I got to go with the Thunder in this series, but it's going to be a war, and I'm calling it a 7-game series, Thunder in 7.
All right. World B?
I think it's Minnesota in 6. I think they're going to clinch on their home court. They're going to get one at Oklahoma City. The crowd's going to go crazy. I really think Anthony Edwards, it's his turn, his time to really step up and be that guy. SGA is going to get the MVP at some point in the next couple of weeks. He'll get the MVP, and Anthony Edwards will get the Magic Johnson Trophy for most outstanding player of the Western Conference playoffs. I think Minnesota's playing, as Bruce mentioned, as well as anybody down the stretch of the season, and it's carried over into this playoff series. And I think that's going to continue.
Well, will be if you are correct, and the Minnesota Timberwolves send the Oklahoma City Thunder packing in Game 6 in Minnesota. It's going to be a short drive home for Chet Holmgren, as he is from the Minnesota area. So It's kind of like a homecoming series for him. I've got the Thunder in 6 games. I think in order for the Minnesota Timberwolves to really prevail in this series, it's going to take an MVP-like performance from Anthony Edwards to match the talents in the MVP performance I'm expecting from SGA. I don't know if he's quite ready for that, especially against a team that has this type of defense on the perimeter that can cause some problems. So I'm going to ride with the number 1 seed Oklahoma City Thunder in 6. Next up, we've got the Eastern Conference Finals preview as the number 3 seed New York Knicks and the number 4 seed Indiana Pacers begin their play on Wednesday night. First, let's just call it what it is. There's going to be a new champion this year. Bruce, of course, World B's Knicks knocked you guys off in the last round. So got some thoughts and kind of just the Knicks momentum, World B, as far as New York's concerned. Obviously, it couldn't be higher after knocking off the reigning NBA champions in the NBA. So with that said, the Pacers also have their momentum riding pretty high as well, with their beating a 62-win team in the Cavs. So right, momentum versus momentum. Like, what are we thinking going into game one at Madison Square Garden?
I'm looking forward to it. As you mentioned, this is uncharted territory for the Knicks. It's been a quarter of a century now since they've been in this spot, and this is why New York is, it's all they're talking about right now in the city, and that's always great this time of year when the Knicks are winning playoff basketball, and a city that has the Mets, the Yankees, all the hockey. It's the Knicks that rule, and that's the fun part of being a family. It's been 25 years since I could be that kind of a fan. But yeah, they're riding a big momentum wave. They have the best clutch player on the court. They have a defense that really did a great job in shutting down Boston. And it's not going to be easy. Like you said, we're going to get into it. But for me right now, I'm about enjoying this as much as I have since their last finals trip in '99.
Bruce, do you have any nice thoughts on the Knicks?
Listen, both of these teams, the Pacers and the Knicks, knocked off 60-win teams in the second round, okay? And however they did it, whether, New York benefited from some, less than heady play by the Celtics, but still, they came up clutch. They were gritty. They did what they had to do. And both of these teams totally deserve to be where they are. But here's the deal. Indiana is an offensive juggernaut. They come at you in waves. They share the ball extremely well. They make opponents work hard on defense because they move the ball from side to side. In the playoffs, they've assisted on 69% of their made baskets, okay? New York, of course, relies heavily on Brunson to handle the ball and score, and they assist on just 44% of their made field goals. So in some ways, I think they might be a little bit easier to guard than Indiana's going to be. The Pacers have been scoring almost 118 points a game in the postseason. That's 11 more than the Knicks. But the Knicks allow 6 fewer points per game, and their grittiness is legendary. Here's my concern about the Knicks in this series. And again, so far, this really hasn't been a problem, even though we talk about it nonstop. But their starters play a lot of minutes. I mean, Thibodeau basically relies on 7 guys. Indiana's starters play fewer minutes, and Rick Carlisle uses 8 or 9 guys most nights. Talent-wise, Indiana, I think, has a little bit more firepower. But Cat has been amazing against the Pacers this season, averaging 30 and 12. Miles Turner will totally have his hands full guarding him. And interestingly, each team has a member of the 2019 NBA champion Toronto Raptors on their team. Pascal Siakam of the Pacers and OG Anunoby of New York. Siakam, of course, was Robin to Kawhi Leonard's Batman that year, while Anunoby was inactive during the postseason, but he did play 67 regular season games for those guys. So that could end up being a nice little individual matchup there, Raptor on Raptor violence, so to speak.
Yeah, that's the matchup I was going to actually touch base on. So well timed there, Bruce. I think that's going to be a fascinating matchup throughout the 7-game series, is the fact that I think Pascal Siakam is kind of like that key, almost like I spoke about Julius Randle and the Wolves. They're going to really need him to really step up, provide some scoring. He struggled in the last series against the Cavaliers, believe it or not. I think he was scoring anywhere from like 10 to 15 points a game. I think he's going to have to get that number up somehow in order to, continue to help lead this team with the point production, given that they don't have the firepower of some other teams like the Celtics when they're hot from 3. I think they're going to need that. And I had a question for you too as well with the Pacers, and that is, do you think Obi Toppin will have a moment in this series where it's like almost like a revenge moment? Obi Toppin goes for like 4 or 5 threes and kind of haunts the Knicks.
Well, I certainly hope not. But I mean, it's really possible. Bruce is right. The depth is a big advantage for Indiana. I mean, no team gets fewer minutes from their bench in the postseason than the Knicks, like 10 minutes a game. They just don't have a deep team. So Obi's going to have his opportunity, that's for sure. And he's on a team that's really shooting the lights out. They've been the best offensive team in the postseason. Their offensive efficiency has been it's the best of all the remaining teams, about 117 per 100 possessions. So they're clearly the best offensive team remaining of the 4. So yeah, Obi's got a shot there. I think for them to succeed, they're going to have to. Bruce kind of touched on it. They're going to have to figure out how they want to guard Cat. It's not going to be as simple as put Miles Turner on there, because Miles Turner is in Karl-Anthony Towns had a great season series against the Pacers, but he's coming off a horrendous playoff series against the Celtics. 3 of 19 from 3-point range. It was a disaster for him from long range, but he had Porzingis to deal with. He had Al Horford to deal with. Miles Turner is not nearly as mobile as those guys as a defender. He can hit the 3 too, so it'll be interesting to see how that works out. I'll be interested to see how the Pacers decide to match up with Karl-Anthony Towns, who absolutely cannot have another poor series like this, and the Knicks have a shot to advance.
Great point there. And Bruce, when it comes to Tyrese Halliburton, obviously he's a huge engine to the Pacers' success, whether he's dishing the ball or making some shots. Obviously, making the shots has been a struggle for him here in the postseason at times, and some would say even helped, kind of stole a game from Cleveland with his late heroics there. I don't know if there's that much room for error against a team like the New York Knicks, team that just knocked off the Celtics. So what are your thoughts on Halliburton? Do you think we're going to get a big-time series from this guy? Can he put together a string of games where he's shooting at least 40% from the field? Or should there be some concerns for Pacer fans with what Halliburton can provide offensively?
Well, if he's getting into the paint, he's more than willing to pass the ball off for good shots. I mean, he isn't a guy. I mean, Brunson needs to score big for the Knicks to have a good game, I think. Halliburton can score like 16 points and get like 12 assists and turn the ball over maybe 1 or 2 times, and that's a great game for him. But one of the things I wanted to mention, I really feel like coaching is going to be a huge factor in this series. I mean, Rick Carlisle not only is a master motivator and he's a strategist, at the highest level, he's heading to Springfield one day. He is going to be in the Hall of Fame. And I consider him during the course of a game to be a little bit more flexible than Tom Thibodeau, who sometimes seems reluctant to adjust his approach on the fly. Not saying he never does, but to me, Carlisle is always a little bit more willing to kind of adapt to the game. So if Indiana goes on some early runs, which they are capable of doing, is Tibbs going to overreact? Is he going to burn timeouts, or will he use them properly? I give the edge to Carlisle in this matchup, although both are former members of the Boston Celtics organization, so I have a little bit of love for each one.
Well, I'll say this. I think Rick Carlisle has a lot more guys on that bench that he can trust in big playoff games than Tom Thibodeau does.
No doubt.
There's a lot of wild cards on that.
When you have that depth.
Yeah, exactly.
It's only Tom Thibodeau can only be so flexible with it's Miles McBride and Precious Achiuwa and
he's got to give Landry Shamet a chance, man. If he would just give Landry Shamet a chance.
Yeah, and Mitchell Robinson, who might have been the best player on the court in that series for the Knicks. He was outstanding, bailing them out with offensive rebound after offensive rebound. It was outstanding to watch him play. He reminded me of Marcus Camby during their run to the finals in '99 to a smaller degree, but his defense really was something else. He had a sequence, guys. He had a sequence in that series where the Celtics came down on a fast break, and they dished it out all around the court. All 5 guys touched it for the Celtics, trying to get in transition. Mitchell Robinson went out on all 5 guys. And eventually, the ball went to Jaylen Brown. He went out on Jaylen Brown, stole the ball from him, and turned it into the possession at the other end. It was one of the most amazing possessions I've seen somebody have defensively. He did that the whole series. He was really, really outstanding.
As a Knicks fan, World B,
yeah,
was there anything that made you smile more than watching Robinson knock down those 4 straight free throws in that game when they tried to hack him, Mitch? Because they didn't do it anymore after that. He basically told Joe Mazzulla, okay, Joe, here you go. His form was terrible. The shots were about as flat as can be, but he made all 4 of them. And if I was a Knicks fan, I would have been like, F you, Joe Mazzulla.
No, the strategy was fine. He tried to do something. It's fine. It was working for a couple of games. But, yeah, in that game, they actually ended up losing. You're talking about Game 5 there because Celtics had a humongous third quarter. But up until then, yeah, he was the reason they were still in the game in their first half of Game 5. He was 4 out of 4, or was it 6 out of 6? I can't remember exactly. But, yeah, that was a lot of fun to see him finally because you guys saw it. He was agonizing right there at the free throw line over missing these free throws. It was really hard to watch. Just not watch him miss, but his reaction was really tough to watch.
Not really.
It's tougher for some than others.
All right, World B, I got one last question for you, and then we'll get
All
to
right.
our predictions here. And that is, in your worst nightmare, things go the Pacers' way. What are the chances we see Tyrese Haliburton break out the chokehold at Spike Lee at the Garden?
Well, it could happen. I'd like to think he can come up with something better than that. It's been used or whatever. Maybe him and Reggie Miller could both do it. I don't know. He's going to be there, I imagine. So they could pull that off. I am hoping this is the last time we address this question for until next year. Because you asked me this last year during the playoffs, and I think I gave you the same non-committal answer as I am right now.
Well, I mean, he broke out the Dame time last year, and things are rolling their way right now. So that could keep coming. But anyway, Bruce, let's get to our predictions now. You're up.
The Knicks have the home court, and I believe they need to win games 1 and 2. They need to get up 2-0 in this series. If the Pacers get a split in New York, the Knicks are going to have to dig deep in games 3 and 4. And I think the Pacers are going to run them and then run them and then run them some more, hoping to wear them down. If you hold a gun to my head, I'll go with Indiana in 6. But if the Knicks win it in 7, I won't be shocked.
All right. World B?
Knicks in 3. Well, all right, hold on.
Oh, okay.
I think they're going to win it, and they'll get revenge for last year's Game 7 disaster and pull it out in game. I think it's going to be a 7-game series. I think Indiana has just been playing too darn good for months now. This isn't just a flash get it together in the postseason. They were really solid from about January on. They picked it up at both ends. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. Think about how good Indiana's defense was. Cleveland had the best shooting season, one of the best shooting seasons in the history of the sport, with their overall effective field goal percentage, which combines threes, gives a little more power to threes. But they held Cleveland to 43%, less than 43% from the field, and under 30% from three-point range. That's unbelievable defense by them. And now, Cleveland was throwing up bricks or whatever, but you got to give credit to Indiana's defense. So I think that keeps them in the series. I think the Knicks are going to prevail in 7 games. They're going to do it just as they did in 1994.
All right. Well, I echo a lot of those thoughts, except for the historical part that I'm lacking. But I've got the Knicks in 7. I think this one will go the distance for sure. I think it's going to be a series. I do believe the Pacers will win one of the first 2 games, Bruce. But I think the Knicks can respond into Indiana for one of those, and then it's going to be all up for grabs in that game 7. And I got to give the Knicks the edge at home because that place will be rocking. So should be a fun series in each of the 2 conferences. All right, and let's talk about some of the teams that were just recently eliminated. And we're going to start out with the Denver Nuggets, because the big question is, what's next for this team, World B? I mean, the big question underlying everything is, will Joker finish his career with just 1 title? What are your thoughts on that?
It's absolutely possible at this stage. You got to figure, as they're currently constructed, it's pretty clear this is not a championship team anymore. Really not a championship contender, if you want to be honest. They have put up big numbers, but it continues to be all about Joker. When he is off the court, the team just can't get it together. They did a little bit in the playoffs, but not nearly enough to justify, to get away with putting Joker on the court, off the court. I mean, so that's the biggest question. They got to bring in a new coach. Perhaps we don't know what the future is going to be for them with their coaching situation, but they just don't have. You're not winning anymore with Aaron Gordon. Played his heart out. We all saw how hard he played. No problem there. Jamal Murray, we all keep waiting to see when is he going to get that All-Star, that first All-Star appearance, because he's one of those top players in the league, we feel like. And Christian Brown made himself a lot of money with his performance in the playoffs here, coming up as a free agent, restricted free agent, I believe. So they have talent, but it just doesn't work when Joker's not on the court, and they have to figure that out. And I don't see that window closed pretty quick for them unless they can figure out ways to bring in more talent and make them a contender again. I don't know if they have it in them at the moment to win any more titles.
Bruce, what's your thoughts on the Nuggets?
I mean, they showed me a lot against OKC. I mean, they were 18 games behind them in the regular season. They pushed them to 7. I thought that was a really outstanding job by those guys. Joker is still at the top of his game. He's going to be at the top of his game for several more years because of the way he plays. And, when Jamal Murray's healthy, they're a really great 1-2 punch. As World B mentioned, Christian Braun took a major leap forward this season. And I think next year he could be a borderline all-star. I mean, he's got so much more upside that we haven't seen yet as he gains confidence, which you could see, he really has. Gordon, as you mentioned, I mean, showed his value as a force on the court and also the emotional leader, engine, whatever you call him on the team. Seems like he's been around forever. He doesn't turn 30 till September, but everything you guys said was true. Is David Adelman going to be their next head coach? Who's going to be their general manager? Their defense definitely needs to be improved. So their next coach, whoever it is, whether it's Adelman or someone else, really has to be focused on that. And then there are still lots of questions. I mean, look, Michael Porter Jr. had a pretty solid season, played 77 games, but almost like a mini Porzingis, you'll walk on eggshells with him when it comes to his health. At any time, you feel like he could go down for a month or longer, whatever. He turns 27 next month, so he's still, relatively young. Russell Westbrook turns 37 in November. He's got a player option for next season. Whether he exercises it or not, who knows? It is a very affordable price tag, around $3.4 million. He can still eat some innings for you off the bench, and he still plays with incredible energy. But they're going to need guys like Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson to really progress in their roles if they expect to be any better than they were this year. Denver could win 50 games next year for the 4th season in a row, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be any better off than they were this year. So, will Joker win another championship in his career? I would say the chances are under 50%.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think looking at this team, not just this team, but this franchise, I mean, there's a lot to be ironed out, as you guys both mentioned. Front office, who's going to be the general manager. I do think David Adelman, if I had to give my hot take, is going to be the coach next year. It seemed like got a lot of high praise from the team. Even after the Game 7 loss, it seems like that team really responded and rallied around him and respect the voice that he has amongst the group. So that was good to see, and always like to see a younger head coach that's really grinded get an opportunity to be a full-time head coach. So kind of rooting for him there. But as far as the team's concerned, I mean, yes, the young players, Watson, Strawther, both need to improve, play a bigger role next year. Of course, Brown's in there. But Michael Porter Jr., man, like, what are they going to do with this guy? Like, he's overpaid. I mean, the production's really not there. I mean, it kind of always stems back to, like, the draft night, right? Like, tremendous value. He slid in the draft, but there was a reason why. And I feel like that why is coming to fruition, even at the young age of 27 years old. I can't see him being a guy that can step up and help this team. And sadly enough, it's almost like a Chris Middleton situation in Milwaukee, and why they decided to try to move off of him, just not available, not able to produce like he once was. And the shame in that is MPJ is, years younger than him. So I don't know what's going on, but if you ask me, Joker's probably not going to win another title when you look at the rest of the West and what Houston's doing, Oklahoma City has. You look at the cabinets of draft picks both teams have. It's going to be too hard there.
I mean, think about the Western Conference. How many teams, would you pick before you pick Denver as a team to potential come out of the West? I mean, they're not in any better spot than they were now than when the season, when the postseason began. They played hard. They took the champs, the best record, team with the best record, to 7 games. They get credit for that. But, we're talking championship. I agree with you guys. Where Oklahoma City isn't going anywhere. Minnesota looks like they're not going anywhere. Golden State are on their last legs, but they're just as formidable as Denver right now. If you look at it, there's just a lot of teams left. Houston's a team that's coming, that you figure will improve, or they should improve.
So San Antonio's coming too.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of teams. Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of teams. The Clippers were a surprise. You go through a lot of teams before you get to Denver in the West. And that it's tough enough to be an upper level team in the West and get out of it. If you're in the middle to the bottom, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Well, from one former NBA champ to the next, Bruce, what's next for the Boston Celtics? I mean, looking at team payrolls, as of now, the Celtics are going to have the highest payroll in basketball next season, which leads me to believe someone from this current group is going to be odd man out next year, especially with new ownership. What are your thoughts on the Celtics moving forward?
Well, look, people in Boston are like totally overreacting to everything. They're saying Jaylen Brown's a bum. Jaylen Brown is a freaking warrior, okay? Jaylen Brown, I'll take 10 Jaylen Browns anytime, okay? Jaylen Brown has accomplished a ton in this league, and he still maybe hasn't even played his best ball. Turns 29 at the start of next season. He'll be the undisputed main man next year with Tatum as he recovers, and I believe he'll make an all-NBA team next season. As for Tatum, I think, he's probably going to be a pretty quick healer. His work ethic has always been strong. He has that Mamba mentality, always idolized Kobe. He's even younger than Brown. He just turned 27 in March. So if he comes back before the end of next season, I won't be shocked. But I hope he's cautious and doesn't put himself in a position to suffer a major setback, because it just isn't worth it, They probably don't have, what it takes, even if he comes back later in the year. The three guys that are the real unknowns are Porzingis, Drew Holiday, and Al Horford. Now, if Al is willing to be Boston's version of Udonis Haslem, keep him on the roster forever. He's great in the locker room. He's great in practice. If you can get him for a good price, he can be your 8th or 9th man and, be just a great professional influence. Porzingis, missing games, continues a career storyline for him. And as he gets older, it's only going to get worse. I mean, it's not going to get better. It's always going to be something with him. I think he's the guy that's going to be gone, during this offseason. As for Holiday, he may be one of the greatest human beings in the world of sports. He truly is. But he'll soon be 35. He's got 3 years left on his contract for a total of $104 million. He's going to be tough to trade. Okay, so Boston should run him out there next year, increase Pritchard's minutes a little bit more, give him more, playing time, and keep Drew fresh and see if they can make any kind of a run. Look, Brad Stevens has been a really great GM. He's got a lot of decisions to make this summer. The one thing that he does have going for him is that due to the expected season-long injury to Tatum, they're going to qualify for a disabled players exception, which means they can sign anyone, but they have to keep them in that mid-level range or around $14 million a year. So they can sign someone for around $14 million. I don't think they should try to find a replacement for Tatum. I don't think that's the answer. What they should do is look for some beef rather than trying to find that replacement. A couple guys I looked at on the free agent list that I thought might fall into that $14 million slot. Steven Adams, only 31 years old. There's a guy who'll play his ass off for you. And I like B-ball Paul Reed, who's a free agent. He's a guy who'll pound the glass for you, play some defense. So those are the guys that I would try and get, because they can also do some good for the team when Tatum does return. You're not replacing Tatum with somebody who then you're going to have to get rid of. So It's going to be a tough offseason for Brad, a lot different than last year. But you know what? This guy knows what he's doing. So I have faith. They're not going to win it next year, I don't think. But, they're not going to be suckers either.
Yeah. Well, maybe you guys can sign Bazooka Buddy from Golden State. He'll sign up to take Tatum's threes that will be missed next season. See how that goes. Worldy, where do the Celtics go from here in your perspective?
They're the most interesting offseason team to pay attention to. And Bruce alluded to some of the reasons where the price tag for them is really what it's all about with them. As Bruce mentioned, they got a new owner coming in, and their payroll is projected, according to reports, to be next season about $225 million. They're going to have a price tag of tax liability of almost $300 million, about $280 according to the report. That's $500 million almost in a price tag for this team. That's a heck. Some people got to go. Now I know Drew Holiday's hard to move, so you got to do some things. You got to sweeten the pot. But I will be surprised if Al Horford, Porzingis, Drew Holiday, or any of them are on the roster next season. And not because of lack of talent, lack of desire. They're just the money doesn't seem to add up. And we've talked about it in the past. I couldn't tell you. Hopefully we'll get somebody in the offseason who knows the salary cap or whatever. But everything I read about, that second apron is the death nail for a franchise. You do not want to get on that. And Boston's inching ever so close. And the other problem is, as Bruce alluded to, the East is not – we're watching it right now with Indiana and New York in the championship, Eastern Conference Finals. The East is not a given anymore. Even with the Celtics put a decent team out with Jaylen Brown. They can compete for the East. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I don't think it's going to happen because of the finances I just discussed, but they have a shot with their team. There's plenty of talent still on their court. What made them over the top was having a player like Jason Tatum. Now you don't have that. So maybe they falls down to that level. Maybe they're not at the Cleveland level or New York level. But then again, maybe they are. It's really tough for them. You don't want to say, well, they're just throwing away the next season. Because I don't see that happening, but I also don't see them having enough players to really compete for a title.
Yep. And speaking of payrolls here will be my question to you both is what's next for the Cleveland Cavaliers? Because they are set to have a top 3 team payroll in the NBA next season. And this is a group that's not even made a conference finals since King James was in town. So, Bruce, I'll start with you on this one. Any drastic changes coming Cleveland's way, or was the drastic change last year when they decided to switch coaches, which turned out to be a good call?
Well, look, their top 5 players heading into next season are very solid. I mean, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, DeAndre Hunter, who I think could be starting for them next season. You know, he might be that guy. Plus Mitchell and Garland in the backcourt. That's a strong nucleus. Ty Jerome's a free agent. Who knows if they're going to be able to pay him. Sam Merrill might be gone as well, although, you know, they could probably get him for a better price tag. So their future is unclear. But hey, you know, LeBron James is a free agent, so maybe he's ready to come back home and compete for chip number 5. That would be very cool to see, to be quite honest with you.
That'd be insane if that happened, yeah.
You need 2 roster spots, though. You need 2 roster spots.
That's true. You got to find a spot for Bronny. You do.
That's right.
You do.
and 3 the next year with Bryce. World B, what's your thoughts on the Cavs moving forward? How do they bounce back after winning 62 games and then flopping in the playoffs?
Well, here's the thing with them. I just mentioned how the Celtics have this wild offseason. They're going to be the most watched offseason to me in the league. I think the team with the biggest questions coming up is Cleveland, because you mentioned, what do they do with that big 4? Clearly they're not getting. They had this great regular season, and they're starting to get that rep as a great regular season team, as Toronto was for years until they went and got Kawhi Leonard. And they made a coaching change and got Nick Nurse, and we know how that turned out. Toronto, until then, was having the reputation as a great regular season team, can't get it done when it counts most. We're starting to see Cleveland fall into that trap. But what do? Do you just break them up, or we just talked about how the East is very winnable for everybody, and this is the team that had the best record in the East this year. Do you just break them up? Do you let them develop even further? Think about this too, guys. We know they got beaten 5 games by Indiana, but they don't blow game 2. They absolutely blew that game. We saw how wild that comeback was. What are we talking about with this Cavalier team? Could they possibly have, it's a 1-1 series and maybe they pull it out? Maybe they come away. That's home court advantage for them. Maybe they get that back. So it's really interesting what's going to be happening with them. It's hard to see them break this team up after what they made the move to get DeAndre Hunter at midseason. They have a good nucleus. The East is a wild ride. So I'm going to be really interested to see how they go forward.
Yeah, those are three big name teams to keep an eye out this offseason. All right, and next up, we've got the 2025 WNBA season that is now underway. And wisely, the league had an early season matchup between Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark this past weekend. And it did not disappoint, and it came with some drama with a flagrant foul. So really quickly here, I wanted to ask both of you. Bruce, was that a basketball play, as Caitlin Clark said post-game, or was there a little dirt in there?
It was a hard foul by Clark, but it wasn't dirty. She didn't try to hurt Angel or throw an elbow. She stopped a layup by a bigger player. And then Reese jumps up like a fake tough girl because she was embarrassed that Clark stopped her from scoring, period. It does add some spice to a league that badly needs it. This helps them a lot. Now every Fever Sky game will be must-watch TV.
Oh, yeah.
And they play 4 more times during the regular season. Their next game is June 7th.
Nice. Love that. Yeah, that was a matchup that we'll all look forward to on June 7th. World B?
Well, as a fan of the Knicks through the 90s, that was barely a foul if you go by that level. It was a flagrant foul. There's no question about it. It was excessive. She deserved what she got. I don't know why Angel Reese was all of that upset about it, but that's right. I think there's clearly some jealousy there on Angel Reese's part towards the attention, justifiably, that Caitlin Clark gets. She's amazing. She had a triple-double in her debut. She's going to set the standard by the time she's done in the WNBA. She's going to be on that Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, that level by the time she's done in the WNBA. So it's hard when you want to be recognized, but you're not going to be recognized because we have this supreme player right there in Caitlin Clark. So, yeah, everything worked out the way it was supposed to work out. She got called for a flagrant foul. It just happened to be against Angel Reese, and that's what the fans want to see right now in the league. So you got your wish.
For sure. And Caitlin Clark, of course, was last year's number 1 overall pick. This year's number 1 overall pick was out of UConn, Paige Bueckers, who made her WNBA debut for the Dallas Wings on Friday night in an 84-99 home loss to the Minnesota Lynx. She finished with 10 points on just 3 of 10 shooting. Bruce, you're our Connecticut native here, so we got to ask you, I mean, is the 3 of 10 shooting just some debut jitters? What can you tell us more about Bueckers' game?
Yeah, Paige is a bucket getter. Look, but she's a rookie. She was 3 of 10, as you said. She did lead the team with 7 rebounds. They lost by 15 to Minnesota. She is a native of Minnesota, so she gets another chance against the Lynx in Minneapolis on Wednesday of this week. So, it's always tough to be a rookie in any league. So Paige is going to take her lumps early. But along with Clark and Reese, Paige Buckets will soon be one of the faces of the WNBA.
Well said there. Anything to add on Paige, World B?
Yeah, I would not worry about her first game. It was her first game. She's under the microscope as much as, if it wasn't for Caitlin Clark last season, she would be under the microscope like we haven't seen in this league in a while. And, Caitlin Clark didn't exactly just come out of the blue and start shooting 40% from 3 all the time either. She got better as the season went on. So let's give Paige just a little bit of time and get her feet. She's going to be much watched TV for this summer if you're watching the WNBA, which I'm looking forward to watching her play because she's that good of a player. She's really good.
Awesome stuff. All right, final thoughts, Bruce.
I have a confession to make.
Oh,
I didn't watch all of Game 5 of Celtics Knicks live on Friday night.
Ooh.
I was at a comedy show at the Mohegan Sun Casino that my wife had booked well in advance. As the comedy show with Amy Poehler and Tina Fey ended, which was very funny, by the way, I looked at my phone as we're getting up to walk out of the arena, and I saw the Knicks were ahead by 22 points in the first half. So we walked over to the sports book and watched a little bit, but it only got worse from there. By halftime, it was over. I skipped the second half, and to further my misery, I got pulled over driving home from the casino. Pulling out of the parking lot, there was a yellow light. I went through the yellow light, didn't see the cop sitting there, He pulled me over. He was very nice, but he asked me if I'd been drinking because I was coming from the casino. I had not. Well, not for several hours before, but I had one glass of wine, which, that's nothing. Yeah. Still, he asked me to recite the alphabet, which I haven't done since my 30-something sons were little kids. So with flashing blue and red lights reflecting in my rearview mirror in my face, my clutch gene kicked in. I nailed the alphabet. And although the Celtics' luck ran out that night, mine did not. He let me off with a warning.
Nice. Good stuff there. Fun fact here, the alphabet was one of the first early nicknames for Giannis in Milwaukee before the Greek Freak was established. World B, what's your final thought?
Boy, you just couldn't get through one show without mentioning the Greek Freak there, could you?
Could not.
Greek Freak. It's 3.
I saw on social media the other day, I'll make this quick. I saw on social media the other day that Trae Young, for whatever reason, just to troll out, stir the pot there against the Knicks fans, started talking about how OKC fans are louder than Knicks fans. And I have nothing to dispute that. I don't know. It seems pretty loud over there in OKC, so I would not dispute that. But I would also like to let Trae know that when the Knicks come to town in Atlanta, that the Knicks fans are louder than Falcons or Hawks fans. Excuse me. So nice. we like to consider Atlanta that's second home for us. And I would refer back to the '99 playoff run when they were playing in the Georgia Dome, and more than half the crowd was full of Knicks fans, and they swept them that series. So they got plenty to cheer about. So it's all right if Oklahoma City has louder fans than New York. We come down to Atlanta and we tend to outnumber the Hawks fans. So I'll take that.
Great response there, Will be. Shots were fired back. I love the return fire there. And I can confirm because when I was with the New York Knicks, opening night was in Oklahoma City, and we faced off against the Thunder, which had Paul George, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, and that place was rocking. Even before we went out there for pregame warmups, you could hear the locker room shaking with all the fans there.
Yeah, here's the thing too, real quick. Everybody talks about we have the loudest fans. Where are the worst fans? I mean,
Atlanta.
Besides Charlotte, which can't sell out.
Atlanta fans are so lame. Atlanta fans. Where are Miami fans are pretty lame too.
Well, but yeah, because the Knicks outnumber them there too. That's true. That's a good.
Oh boy.
But we always talk about this team has the loudest fan. Are the teams that really is there a fan base that's louder at a game than Boston? I mean, that place is rocking. I agree with Oklahoma City. I agree about them, so it's just funny. And we all talk about the loudest fan. Well, every fan base is the loudest. We feel like, or they should.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. As for my final thought, Memphis forward Gigi Jackson recently joined a podcast and schooled myself along with many others with a new term that needs to be added to the NBA's version of the Urban Dictionary, which is pigeons. Pigeons are what the Memphis Grizzlies call opposing teams' weakest defenders and the players they look to target and pick on defensively. So to close out the show, I want to ask World B and Bruce, name me one pigeon, past or present, that comes to your mind. Bruce?
Oh, boy, probably Enes Kanter.
That's a good one. All right, World B?
Well, my legendary love for Jerome James as a Knicks fan
there we go.
Is probably
he was a big pigeon.
Yeah, that'd probably be he's a big one, and he's got all the garbage on his shoulder there too to show for that. But yeah, that'd probably be my choice.
All right, and I'm going to go with Jordan Poole, and with that will do it for this edition of the 48 Minutes podcast on BLEAV. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with you next week to be sure you're up to date in 48 on all things around the association. Take care, everyone.